Hey everybody, it's Norm from Tested.
And Sean from Tested.
Today we're going to be reviewing a 3D printer you've been using for quite a long time.
Yeah.
It's right between us. It's the Lulzbot TAZ.
TAZ 6.
It looks like a pretty big 3D printer here.
It's a honking big printer. It's great. The Lulzbot has been around for like almost from the beginning of the whole home 3D printing thing. They're like a Maker Faire standard. They're a US-based company out of Colorado, I believe. And it's actually Aleph Objects is like the parent company, and they make the Lulzbot. So they have the TAZ 6 and the Mini, which you've been messing around with at home. There's a lot of things that I like about it. There's a few, little things in there, but we'll talk about all those. But the basic specs, one, it's open source, which is awesome. Both the software, they're using a version of the Cura software from Ultimaker, which is open source. They're using their own particular build of that. All the hardware and everything is open source. You can download and print parts from it, which is awesome. It has a gigantic print area. It's roughly 11 by 11 by 10.
It's almost
monstrous.
A cube. A foot cube.
Monstrous.
Almost, wow.
And everything on it is just beefy. This is like really solidly built. The rails, the lead screws, like everything is just big and beefy about this.
When you say built, though, it's really important to know, even though it's an open source design and you can replace parts, it comes pre-built. The two machines they have, the TAZ 6, the Mini, are ready to print turnkey solutions.
Yeah, and there's some assembly required with this because it is so big they have to collapse it down for shipping, but it was a breeze to put together. I had it together in no time and printing in no time.
Now, some of the features, though, that are shared between the two machines are, well, it has an auto leveling surface.
Which is great, yeah. So it has these 4 contact points around here, and it'll go around and level the bed every time it's going to print. That worked really well. I had no, adherence issues to the bed at any point or anything like that, so it worked great. And the other nice thing, it has this little wiper.
I love
which is good. So for auto leveling, particularly where you need to do a electrical contact, what can happen is you get some boogers or filament left on there. It can interfere with the leveling process. So it has this little wiper, kind of like a heavy felt that it runs the nozzle through, cleans it off before it does that. And they give you extras, which is great.
It heats up the head. Not to a full heat, enough that you have a little bit of the filament that's worn out, and then it rubs itself against this felt padding, and which, having used this for a couple months and doing prints on a regular basis, my first felt padding is still pretty good. You can clean that out and wipe the boogers away.
You can take it out, flip it over, and they're cheap, so it's a great little solution. I like that.
It really means that from sending design to print, it's hands off.
Yeah. I found it to be very reliable. I had little to no fails on it. The leveling worked great, and in addition to, now with the big one, they have a heated print bed. Okay. It's a glass print bed, but it also has a PEI surface on it. And PEI is like the hot thing right now, because getting things to stick to the print bed has always been a problem, especially when you start to use the more hard to print stuff like ABS. It's always a little tricky.
Back in the day, we were putting masking tape,
Kapton tape,
on top of print beds.
Yeah.
And you actually had third-party PEI surfaces that you could replace your print beds with.
You can get PEI, and from McMaster, I got actual thick sheets of it that you can replace the whole print bed. This is interesting because it's actually glass, but with a very thin PEI sticker on it. Now that may. If people who remember Kapton tape, they're like, oh, forget that. It's a really thick film. It's more like putting a protective screen on your phone, so it's pretty easy. So if you mess it up or scratch it up, you can peel it off, put a new one on.
That is something to note, because you can potentially scratch it up.
You can.
You can gouge into it.
Sometimes it sticks a little too well.
Yeah, exactly. But you've been happy with the print quality.
Yeah, and it's using a 3mm filament. Now, typically you see 1.75. There's plenty of 3s out there. The 3mm ones tend to be Bowden extruders, which are the ones that have the drive mechanism from the back, like the Ultimaker. Now, this is actually a direct drive, but it is using 3mm. I have heard reports of people doing some tweaks and running 1.75 through it. This is a pretty mod hacker-friendly printer, especially since it's open source. Yep. So that's nice, but the 3 has worked just fine.
Is there an option for dual head extruder?
Yeah, so the interesting thing about this is, so one little odd thing is the nozzle on this is a 0.5 millimeter nozzle. Typically you see a 0.4, so that's, I'm not sure why that choice. It's interesting.
Do you feel like that affects the resolution, not in terms of the layer height, but in terms of like how big the beads are?
Maybe slightly. I did some comparison tests between this and like the Ultimaker, which we'll talk about then, and it does. And it also leads to some kind of weird choices for layer heights as the defaults. Not that it's a problem, it's just not what you're used to seeing. We'll talk about that. So now, so you can't really easily swap out the nozzle itself. That you technically can. They don't recommend it because it can mess with the auto leveling and stuff like that. So basically what they did is you take out one Allen screw here and the whole extruder comes off.
With all the fans, the whole unit, and then you buy a new one, swap it in.
Yeah, now I've heard some reports of because of that system, I've heard of some people having problems with wobbly print heads, like it didn't mount securely. I didn't have any problems with that, it was fine. But then you can swap in other assemblies. So they have the Flexi Extruder, which is specifically for like Ninja Flex and Flex materials. They have the More Extruder, which is, this is ridiculous, a 1.2 millimeter nozzle. So it's like printing spaghetti.
Yeah.
It's awesome. So if you want to do really, really big, fast prints, the More Extruder is great for that.
What type of layer heights do you put with that? That's got to be real thick.
Yeah, it's really thick. Yeah.
Okay, but fast prototyping,
but
big
super
shapes.
fast. Yeah. So if you're not doing really detailed things, it's a perfect choice. And they do have a dual extruder option that you can swap in as well. And those range anywhere from $300 to $400 range and it's just a snap-in, plug-it-in solution. So that's nice to have.
Right.
It comes with 1 year warranty and support, which is nice. And like I said, US based, so it's easy getting parts and that support and everything. I printed pretty much everything in their PLA, the Polymaker, which is ridiculously priced. It's super cheap. And it printed great. I had no problems with it. I think I will be picking more of that up regardless of what machine I'm printing on.
They have some pretty good colors too.
Yeah, nice colors and like I said, really good pricing on that.
But let's talk about the print quality itself.
Yeah.
So we have the classic tugboat, the very
the Benchy,
standard, the Benchy tugboat here, which explain to people why this is a good benchmark for print quality.
Because it has a lot of features that are torture tests for it. So it has like these arches and curved surfaces and slope surfaces and very small cylindrical things. So it just tests like how well it can bridge empty spaces, how well it can do circular stuff and not get stringing and stuff like that. So this turned out really well.
Is this right off the printer, or did you have to do cleanup and take away any of these boogers?
No boogers.
Wow.
Okay. So I was very happy with how the Benchy turned out. It's very small, but the detail turned out really well.
That's fantastic. And the thing I always look for is under these arches, whether there's strings between them, and also under the curved surface here, if it looks ugly because of the overhang.
And that's why it's a torture test. Yeah. And we did their Roctopus, which is, actually this is the Octopus, not the Roctopus, but this turned out well. This is a good torture test because of all the curved surfaces. Also turned out nice. And then I wanted to do big stuff. So I started out, I have my mercury capsule. This is a resin print, but this is my mercury capsule that I modeled, and I wanted to start doing some bigger parts for that.
Right.
And so I started like this size, which turned out pretty nice. This is at, I wrote it actually down. This is at 0.1 millimeters, which is your
100 micron thickness.
That can be, depending on the printer, that can be like fine or medium, depending on which printer you're using. Overall, it turned out pretty good. I did a comparison print with the Ultimaker, which is the printer I have at home for most part, and it's known for doing really fine layer resolutions and really fine detail. I feel that the Ultimaker turned out a little bit better, but this is still solid. This is still turned out really nice.
What are the attributes that did make it a difference? And is it things that would be that you could clean up if you wanted to clean it up, or are there fundamental shifts in layers? Or?
Yeah, one of the things that I did experience on this was a effect called ringing, which is where you get these kind of little echoes of. So you have a rivet, and you get a little echo of that rivet kind of going out, and that typically is attributed to like mechanical vibration and stuff like that, which can cause that type of stuff. And also can happen from acceleration, like how fast the printer's accelerating during printing.
Right.
And I got more ringing on the TAZ than I got on the Ultimaker, but it was still a really good print. I was still happy with it. So that was nice. So that was that. So then I was like, well,
You got to go big.
yeah. So this is like, you know, pretty big. So then
The reason you have a
then we did
11
this.
by 11, oh my God.
So this is 2 pieces.
Wow.
This guy pretty much was the as big as I could go on the print bed, more or less. And actually, there was still even a little bit of room with this guy, but I did these in 2 pieces. These are both about 1-day prints, a little more, but overall they turned out really, really well.
Yeah.
No print problems, no failures. Now, if we do look at this one, and as a comparison, I did do it on the Ultimaker as well.
Now, I can tell what you mean, like with the rivets here.
Yeah, you get
on
a little.
the outside, there's a little bit of this echo ringing that goes around it.
I feel I got a little bit cleaner finish on the Ultimaker, but once again, this is still, I was still overall pretty happy with this.
God, yeah, no, there's still a little bit of ringing, like there's echoes on the Ultimaker
you're gonna
as
get
well.
that. You're gonna get that on anything. Just the degree to your, you know, what you're gonna get it.
That's really nice.
But the print volume on this is fantastic. You could literally do a full Stormtrooper helmet in one piece on that, which is awesome.
That's unbelievable.
So overall, I was pretty pleased with how these things came out, and relatively quick print for how big they were. I mean, a day sounds crazy, but it's a lot. There's a lot of printing there.
And obviously, not everyone needs a printer of this size, and the
Yeah.
printer's much smaller. So on the flip side, the one I've been using from Lulzbot is the Lulzbot Mini. That one has a build area of 6 inches by 6 inches by 6 inches, which it's good for miniatures. It'll be great for things like this. You know, if
Yeah,
you're-
these turned out great.
and this is a pretty complex model. I will flip it around and show you that it did face challenges in terms of the overhangs, printing it like this, even with support material.
Yeah.
Got a little messy. And then pretty much the biggest thing printed on that
Nice.
was this shark, which it's a simple print. You know,
Sure.
it angles upwards, more of a pyramid shape.
But still, really nice surface finish on that.
Surface finish, when you're looking for like boogers that stick out, none of those here. There's no cleanup actually on this one. It came out almost perfectly.
Yeah.
So pretty happy with the print quality. And like I said, it's a turnkey solution, meaning it took from unboxing to setup to printing is half an hour.
Yeah.
And you're gonna be happy with the results.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit more about some other stuff that we liked. Out of the box setup is great. They give you a ridiculous amount of tools, which I love. Like it came with a complete tool set, like all the adjustment tools, pliers, X-Acto, you know, everything, probes, which was a nice touch. The one thing that I will comment is it does come with a scraper. I would not use this.
I didn't like this scraper
It's
either.
basically a ground down kitchen knife, and there are much better choices such as the artist palette knife, which I was afraid to really mar up my PEI with this, so I wouldn't use this guy. But otherwise, toolkit, great touch. I really like that. I really like it came with real books. I love it. I am still a paper instruction guy. I love it. So it came with real books. We had a start guide, we had an operation guide, and we have a full user manual, which is fantastic. I love that.
Yeah.
And it really made setting things up quick and easy. The other thing is the SD card came loaded with not only sample models, but it came with the Cura software. It came with the instruction manuals, and this is a real cool. It came with all the parts on the printer that you can print out.
Oh, that's cool.
Which is really cool.
Wow.
So
Okay.
open source is one thing, but going that extra step and I thought that was nice.
It's also another differentiating factor between the Mini and the TAZ 6 is the TAZ 6 has the SD card slot,
Yes.
has the screen. For the Mini, you actually plug that in
Yeah.
USB onto a computer.
Yeah, which historically has always been like, because depending on how the USB worked, if it doesn't transfer the whole file to the printer, then if you go, your computer goes to sleep or whatever. Did you have any problems
I
with
have
that?
a dedicated computer to
right.
not sleep and not worry about that.
So
But you have to have a
I'm not
dedicated
sure how
computer.
the Mini is handling that, so it might be transferring the full file and it's not a problem. I don't know, but yeah, so it has an SD card reader on it. You can just load up and go. It also has a USB interface, so no Wi-Fi or Ethernet or anything like that, which is fine. So that was great. Beefy construction, like this thing is built. I mean, it's just really well built. And one interesting thing to note is it has a lot of 3D printed parts on it.
A lot.
Which
Yeah. Surprising. Like you could like, if you just stare at it, like that's 3D printed, that's 3D printed. Even the bezel around the LCD is 3D printed, and around the SD card, and even the head.
Yeah. I have no problem with 3D printed parts per se. I was a little surprised for the price point. This is a $2,500 printer.
Which is expensive.
For $2,500, I'm surprised by how much 3D printed stuff on it. Like I said, not that it's a problem per se, but like I would have expected more actually like injection molded or stuff like that.
Right.
It did not cause me any problems. And the other nice thing is because all of those files are on the SD card, if you want to mod or print any of these out, that is kind of a cool option. But it's just something to point out. The software is pretty good. It's an earlier version of Cura that they've modified for use with their printers, and they have some nice setups where they have like a beginner setup, a advanced setup, a super advanced setup. So like overall, if you've used the Cura software, it's completely functional. It will get the job done.
Now, because it's a fork of Cura, and they're not getting the latest Cura updates.
They're not on the latest, which is unfortunate because the latest few versions of Cura has been like phenomenal.
Yeah.
And they fixed a lot of problems. Like Cura, like the supports were always kind of so. I think the supports in this are they're so-so. And so they are operating on an older version, which is a little clunkier, but it's still perfectly fine software and it works well, and it'll totally get all your printing needs done without any problem. Like I said, print's good, PLA was good. So things that we didn't like, like the scraper. No, that was fine. The 3D printed parts, I'm not saying that's a bad thing. It's just something to be aware of. Like I said, for that price point, So like I would really like to see a real spool holder here rather than just this little arm, that type of stuff. The interface for a $2,500 printer is a little clunky. It's this kind of, it's not LCD. I don't think this is LCD, but it's one of those ones where if you get a little off angle with it, it disappears. You can't read it. Right. It's very simplistic and kind of not as much information as I'd like necessarily, or as clean as I'd like it. Has a scroll wheel, which works fine.
Also 3D printed?
Yeah. Actually, yes. And now the one thing, but then there's some other things which I feel like were a little unpolished, such as there's no change filament option in the menu. So typically you do a change filament, it heats it up, it spits out the other one, and then it tells you to put in the new one and that kind of thing. There's nothing. So it's literally,
do it in Cura.
Yeah, well, you do it in Cura for the Mini, or you dial in like nozzle temperature, you heat up the nozzle, you yank it out, you put it in, which is not a deal breaker or anything like that, but I would expect some kind of something there to do it for you.
I also found that the process of replacing the filament, unlatching the head here, it's a little bit clunky. Like I'm always worried I'm going to snap the 3D printed part.
Yeah, because you have adjustment screws for the tension on that latch, and if they're not adjusted quite right, you might need to like redo them or whatever. So I found that the nozzle heated up kind of slow. You can't change the nozzles unless you get a whole new extruder, like that type of stuff.
How about the print speed? You happy with the print speed?
It advertised, typically, like I usually run around 90 on a lot of my prints, millimeters per second. The recommended, I think, is on around 50 for this. I did faster and I got a little more ringing and stuff like that. So, but overall, like for the quality of the prints and everything, I was fine with how fast it went.
Yeah, it's not the fastest machine out there, though.
Yeah. I found that the estimate on the prints was usually about 5 or 6 hours off. So
wow, that's big.
It estimated like 21 hours. It took, like 26 hours.
Whoa,
so
that is.
But I found that happens on a lot of programs, so I'm not holding that against them either.
Okay.
Just something to be aware of, the print layer, I think it's due to the 0.5, but their fast print layer is 0.38. Their standard is 0.25, and then their fine is 0.18. Usually you'd see like 0.1, 0.15, 0.2.
Yep.
Not a big deal. It's just like if you're used to like calculating things for the other stuff, then it's like, oh wait.
And you can go in and tweak and
so you can mess around with that.
Height.
So that's not a big deal either. It's just like it took me back from it. It's like, oh wait, not a big deal. Overall, like I said, it's a nice printer. So you know, who would buy this? Who would want this? You know, why would you get this thing? Like I said, for $2,500, there's a few little things I'd like to see polished. But if you want to print really big stuff reliably, this is a really good choice because it has a gigantic print surface.
Now, many printers out there can go almost a foot by a foot by a foot.
If you're living in a dinky San Francisco apartment, this may not. I actually had trouble fitting this in my workshop. The only available space I had for it was not deep enough for the printer. I actually had to put a board on the bench to put the printer. It takes up a lot of room. So that's, you know, if that's a consideration or a problem for you, you may want to, you know, that. Are you printing really big stuff, or do you want to print like D&D miniatures? You know, if you need smaller, finer detail, I would probably lean towards Ultimaker. If you need to do a lot of big, fast stuff, this is an excellent choice. So like cosplayers, like pretty good choice for like if you're going to do armor and stuff like that. So I think it's just a situation of like what's going to work for you. If this works for you, it's a solid printer.
It's a really interesting product category because there are a ton of 3D printers out there. We were in a place where between the Ultimakers and the Peruzas and the Lulzbots, they're reliable now. And many of them are turnkey, where if you just want to jump into it, and whether you're modeling in Tinkercad or you're downloading things from Thingiverse, you could get started printing things super easily. It really becomes about the pricing. Like the Mini is $1,250, which if you can afford it and you want to pay for good tech support and no hassle 3D printing, it's a fine purchase, but it's also a couple $100 more than something for that size and that quality you can get elsewhere.
Sure, yeah. So it just, if it works for you, then it's a good choice.
Yep, so that is the Lulzbot TAZ 6. You think you're using it for future prints, for big projects?
I think so. So this is an ongoing project with Adam and Ryan Nagata that we want to do a quarter scale Mercury, and I thought that this would be a really good choice for that. So far, it has been, so yeah.
Because it is a massive print bed. And then one last thing, the audio, we've been running this the entire time, and it really isn't that loud.
No, it's not the quietest, but it's not the loudest. It's nice, like, yeah, not bad.
All right, so that's the Lulzbot TAZ 6. We'll have more reviews, coverage of 3D printing and 3D printers on Tested. Thanks, Sean, for coming in and showing us the printer.
Anytime.
And we'll see you guys next time.
See ya.